Testing. Okay, sounds good. Sounds like we are live. Hope it sounds good in La La Land out there. Wherever you're at in La La Land. La La Land out there. Wherever you're at. Oh yeah, we are live for sure. For sure we are live. Level 121. Alright, so, where am I at? Alright, I am in Good Neighbor. Right now I am in Good Neighbor. Welcome back to Beagle Eye Visions. It is 11:23 p.m. on Monday, June the 29th. Tomorrow I have to wake up early and record the next book review, which is F Wide Open, featuring Maria West. Maria West wrote the book F Wide Open. I'm very excited. Very, very excited. Let me get the microphone closer to my mouth here. The way you guys can hear the ASMR. Whoa. I thought somebody was actually talking to me. That scared the crap out of me. But anyways, I work today. I closed the restaurant the next 2 days, which is fine. I gotta get Squirt Dog some food somehow. But thank you for tuning in to Beagle Eye Visions. It's me and Squirt Dog in bed in the northern middle of the Midwest, should I say? No, northern part of the Midwest. And we are going to record episode number 57, The Middle Chamber of CubbyWhole podcast, CubbyWhole.com. Make sure you support CubbyWhole.com. I still need to get me one of their sweaters, but as of right now, I really want to get a Dubby sweater. I want to get that Beagle Eye Vision green Dubby sweater before winter hits, and then the next sweater that I want to get is the CubbyWhole podcast. Absolutely, I want to get some CubbyWhole merch. I think they have coffee cups too. I ordered the coffee cup of Captain Clark's Ottoman's Empire, along with a storybook of A24, a storybook with the introduction of Kane Parsons. So I'm very excited to have that storybook on the way. It won't be out until mid-July. I'm definitely going to do a video of it because the Backrooms movie is just so absolutely phenomenal. But this episode is running at 2 hours and 15 minutes, so hopefully I can have the attention span to make it all the way through. I think I can do it. But after 2 hours and 15 minutes from now, it's going to be past my bedtime. So with that being said, I better get started on this episode. And we're going to roam around Boston because it's the city of emeralds. Or no, the Tossers said Chicago is the Emerald City. But now, in this context, I'm going to say Boston is the Emerald City. That's why, Boston Green. The Boston Celtics. Dude, Drifter, when was the last time you've heard of the Boston Celtics? I mean, do you guys even remember the Boston Celtics in 2027 or 2056 or whatever? What year is it actually? The year is... I'm going to find out here just a second. The year is 2288, and it is December in video game. I already said the date of real life. It's 2026, and it's still a shit show. But anyways, we're gonna get some edumacation on free Masonic allegory of the Middle Chamber, more specifically. So I better shut the hell up, and we better get to it because this is a very long episode. So, okay, dude, shut up. Talking. Who is that? Shut up, Drifter. These drifters do not shut up. Keep your iron strapped. Friendly advice. Yeah, dude, I'm an American. I always get to keep that iron strapped. Hollows over balls all day. Okay, Curie. Now Curie wants to talk. Shut up. Shut up. I'm trying to get educated. All right. Episode number 57 of The Middle Chamber, featuring CubbyWhole Podcast. We're going to roam around Boston, get some education. Thank you. If you've made it this far on the playlist, and, once again, stay tuned and stay gold.
Who's the most high? Who's the divine authority? It's all about the claim to the most high. The only way that somebody can be higher than us is if we give away our power. Because there's nobody, we're all equal. But we're not equal in our knowledge, so ultimately I think it does have to be a hierarchy, but it has to be a cooperative hierarchy, like a bee colony. It's about what our value system is, what we care about.
Hello, Universal Hive Mind. Today is November the 20th, 2022. I'm your host, Nate Cap, and welcome to the 57th CubbyWhole Podcast, where critical topics are unveiled, discussed, and tested. The website for today's show is CubbyWhole.com. That's CubbyWhole.com. And if you prefer to listen to this show on a different platform, you can also listen with Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Simplecast, YouTube, Odyssey, Minds, BitChute, and much more. So hopefully you guys are all doing well and ready to take a deeper dive into the second degree of esoteric Freemasonry. And I'm going to get back into the Fellowcraft tracing board and then talk about some of the working tools. And then from there, I'm going to go into the middle chamber. Well, before I go into the middle chamber, I'm going to talk about some symbolism regarding the waterfall and corn, and then also get into some very important occult anatomy, and then I will briefly get into the Fisher King, which is really, really important, and I think it is very crucial to the second degree. So it's going to be a very jam-packed show, a very important show. Not that all these shows aren't important, but before I get into all that, I'd like to cover some important events that have passed and that are coming up. If you didn't get a chance to see the conference Shattering the Illusion back in September, this conference was awesome. Very well put together. All the presenters, all the presentations were really on point. James Cordner was the one who ran it, and he did a very fantastic job. And I believe Joe Murray helped him put it together, who also gave a great presentation. He did some really awesome hip-hop music that deals with natural law and freedom. And I believe you can find his website at freedomforall.com. But James Cordner did such a great job. And I will definitely leave a link in the description if you would like to watch that whole conference. Also, sometime this December 2022, there will be the End of Slavery Summit, which is ran by Corey Endrelot. And I believe there are around 50 speakers now, including Mark Passio, Larkin Rose, David Icke, Hannah Maria, Fred Gingras, Brandon Spencer, Will Keller, and definitely many, many more. Those are the ones that I know. And I was definitely fortunate enough to be part of this summit. So I did an interview / presentation with Corey, where basically he let me do a whole presentation, which I titled
Brotherhood of Steel,
Aim for Freedom. And then at the end, he kind of intervened and asked some questions during the presentation. But then at the end, we kind of had a little bit of a interview conversation at the end, and it was really cool. So it's definitely something I will let you guys know more about when it comes out. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And in the meantime, I'll leave you a link in the description where you can go check out this event and learn more about it. But I'll also share it here, www.nita.one/summit. So that's www.nita.one/summit. And also, something really exciting to look forward to is the Seed 5 conference that's coming up sometime in May, but we will have to wait and see what Brandon has to say as an update for that conference. So that is definitely something to look forward to. And also, aside from being part of that conference and the summit, I've also been on a few other shows lately, including Fred Gingras' show, Liebercast, which has been a very awesome show to listen to, and I think that he has been doing a very fantastic job at getting people together and allowing like minds to share their information, and also allow other light workers to talk amongst each other and, figure out some hard points. And he had me come on his show and present natural law, which was a very important presentation, but it's more dealing with the basics, but the basics are, the foundation. I mean, there's a lot more to natural law. Natural law is just an unfoldment, but I shared what I thought were some very important points, and it was a really cool show. It was actually my first time on a one-on-one live show, so it was good for me personally to be able to just get on and share some very, very important wisdom, and it was a great show. He also had me on to do the table discussions, which is kind of what I just talked about, and that was really, really cool to be part of that as well. Brandon and Doug have actually been on that show too. They did some really great work, really great shows with Fred. Also, I was on the Critical Introverts show to talk about the hero myth, which was it wasn't, the deepest conversation, but it was a fun little conversation. Definitely some deep points, but also I was a guest on Francesco Sani's show to talk about Freemasonry, what it is and what it is not. And we also got into the great work and what that means, what that is. And then we talked about the lost word, and I broke down a little bit of the first degree tracing board. And you can find all my work, all these interviews and newest shows, you can find under Nate at the top of the CubbyWhole website. So it's been a very, very, very busy past couple months, and also I am working very hard not only on these shows but on Outcasting, my side show. And I don't really like to call it a side show. It's more of like an extension of this show, but it's really just a solo show. And, I probably will have some guests on the show eventually, but I just wanted to lay out some foundations in a video type of format. And so it's been kind of fun. It's been exhausting. It's been laboring. It's been rewarding, and it's a very important experience to go through, just to learn how to use the software, use the hardware, and really try to learn how to become the true media, which I'm very thankful for Mark Passio for inviting me to be part of, or, to attend his...
Okay, I do have to say, at this point, I have now had the pleasure of taking the class of how to become the true media seminar, although I was not invited like Nate Cap. I had to pay money, which was over $600 if I remember correctly, but it literally was worth every penny. I have to say, it literally worth every penny. And we'll keep going.
Seminar on how to become the true media, because I've learned so much in that class. So big shout out to Mark. I don't know how he does it, but the dude is just nonstop. He's really, a true inspiration, and I can't say that enough.
And again, I second that. I don't know how he does it. I'm happy that he does do it, because, as far as quote-unquote influencers, like, we all thought Alex Jones was going to be a cool dude, and then he started promoting Orange Guy and all that. There were a lot of people who have, especially after 2020, there are a lot of people who changed up on their status, and a lot of people in the freedom community talk about this, about how people have changed up, how they truly stopped caring about morality. But this is a long episode. I'm going to let Nate do the talking.
So now, on the last show, I was fortunate enough to have Brandon back on. It's been a long time since he came back on, and it was a great show. We broke down green language and phonetic law a lot further, and I hope anyone listening has really taken the time to study that material. The green language, phonetic law is a very powerful spiritual tool that any student of the mysteries should really make a very deep investment into. It's crucial. It's crucial for the sake of basically granting us our lost connections to the ancient elders, to the ancient past, which, basically helps us understand what's happening in the present day, how things have developed in the present day, why things are the way they are. Now, if you're listening outside of the CubbyWhole website, please make sure to go there now, because I made some slides for this show, and you can find them if you go to the CubbyWhole website. Go to the top, go to where it says episodes 51 plus, and then click on that, go all the way down to show 57, and you will see the slides. If you're on your desktop, you'll see the slides to the bottom right, or if you're on your phone, they're at the bottom of the box of the episode 57, okay? Now, just to reiterate a few things, this information is dealing with esoteric Freemasonry, okay?
Hey, Scaver.
This is knowledge, which is dealing with the inner science of the self. It's about occult knowledge that helps us reveal our soul. That's what it does to the individual. It's about understanding the arts, and it's about understanding the science of the self. So it's a speculative craft. It's a speculative art. The science of spirituality that helps the student levitate above the base desires, above the material plane. That's what this information does. If it is taken serious, if it is taken in, if it is understood. So this information is to help the student realize that this tradition is where natural law and morality are taught. and they're taught through a system of allegories and symbols and rituals, which is what Freemasonry ultimately is at its core. Now, something I think I should probably say here and there on these shows dealing with Freemasonry, because it is highly demonized and people are constantly on a witch hunt for anyone who is associated with Freemasonry or anything that is associated with Freemasonry. I think it's important to at least let you know I am not part of any lodge system. I'm not part of any institutionalized lodge, and I don't intend on being part of one. But, you know, the point is that these lodge systems, these institutionalized lodge systems, most of them are highly corrupted. And that's why you don't really hear of any lodge masons coming out and trying to help the world. You know, they might be helping each other on the inside, but they're not coming out of the lodge, and that's because they have an oath. I don't have an oath. And as far as I know, Brandon and Doug don't have an oath either. So we're basically taking as much knowledge as we can that we have learned from other Masons who have written books, who have come out and talked. I mean, look at Manly P. Hall. I mean, you can learn, you can study his work for a few lifetimes. That man has so much work. But the point is that knowledge is what we are taking and learning and coming to deep understandings, and we are putting it out in the airway for the serious student who wants to learn this information, because it is vital. This information is vital. I mean, the people who have this knowledge, because that's the thing, you know, this information is neither good or bad. It's information. It's knowledge. And the people who know this knowledge, who are using it for their own gain, aka the dark occult, the dark dominators, the sorcerers of our world, they're using this information against us collectively. And all I'm doing, all Doug and Brandon are doing, is just taking this information and putting it back out, de-occulting this knowledge, because it is heavily occulted. But the point is that it's not being taught. It's heavily demonized. This information is demonized. It's looked down upon. I mean, I'm seeing so much more of a witch hunt these days for Freemasons, Masons, Freemasonry, anything to do with Freemasonry. It's being heavily demonized. So this is very, very crucial to learn and understand and then share it with others. And, you know, you do your best to be honest in what you learn and what you share. Be honest, because that's the only way that this information is going to do anybody any good. And it's not easy. You know, this knowledge is not easy to completely understand. There's a lot of dogma that you will find, and there is a lot of conjecture. But you do your best to put this information together as clear and concise to your best abilities, and then others will find what is valuable in your work, and they will work from that. And the truth will come out, always. The truth always comes out. And, you know, you do your best. And it's not an easy thing to do. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point. I think it's very important. I think that we need to really educate each other a lot more on not, staying in this witch hunt mentality. I mean, I hear it all the time. And it is, it is absolutely ridiculous how much people will waste their time trying to make something look bad instead of trying to understand it. And that's because they fear it. They fear it, and they don't. And that's what I keep trying to tell people. Look into what you fear. You know, if you fear Satanism, look into it. If you fear Freemasonry, look into it. If you fear Illuminati families or cults, or even in the political world, just look into things. You know, look into them. Look deeper. Go deeper into your research, and you will find the truth, and then you will no longer you will know the difference between right. Well, if you know the difference between right and wrong, let that lead you. Let that lead you. Understand the difference between bad behavior and, knowledge. Because knowledge is not behavior. Knowledge is behavior. It's what people do with that behavior that makes it bad, right? It just makes them bad, not the knowledge, right? It doesn't make the knowledge look good, but you have to understand that it is all about, when it comes to who we should be demonizing, it is those who are doing wrong. It is those who we know for a fact are doing wrong in this world. You know, who is breaking the natural law? That is the one who you should be demonizing, not the knowledge, not the traditions. You know? And know the difference between a Freemasonry. Know the difference between Freemasonry and a Freemason. A human versus a teaching. I don't know why that's so hard for people to differentiate. Why can most people not see the difference? It's the same thing with Christianity versus Christians. You know, Islam versus Muslims, right? Islam is not Muslims. Christianity is not Christians, okay? So we have to learn to understand that it is all about the behavior of the individual or people or groups of people who are doing wrong. And yeah, we should look at what they're using when they do wrong. You know, what religious cult that they're in, or what tradition that they are using. Sure, we should definitely look at that. We should see how they're using it in a wrong way, so that way we learn how to not do those things if we're trying to do good in this world, right? So I don't want to go on and on. There's a lot to cover, but I just really want to stress that. So we're going to look at the second degree tracing board. So definitely make sure that you're following along. And the tracing board that I'm talking about is the one with the 2 brass pillars and the spiral staircase in the middle. And this is Josiah Bowring's painting. This is his second degree painting. Now, obviously, he's done a lot of different paintings, but I really like his style. I've continued to study his paintings in particular because I think they all go together very well, the third, the second, or the first, the second, and the third. And I really just think that they're very simple and they really hold a lot of knowledge. So this is what we're going to spend a lot of time today on, and I really want you to make sure that you have this image up on your screen for the remainder of the show, even though we're going to go through other slides. So, I mean, if you're on your computer, just keep this image up on your screen. If you're on your phone, then, just go scroll back and forth, because it's going to be kind of like a slideshow today. And anyone that's listening, this is how I want you to think when listening to these shows. Okay? I want you to think allegorically. And this is not how I want you to think. This is how you should think. This is how you should listen to this type of information. You should listen to it allegorically. You should listen to it symbolically, and you should listen to it literally, all at the same time, and really get used to that. Train your brain to be that way. And this is what I call the hermetically versatile mind. So this is being hermetically versatile minded, okay? Because it's about listening to things to see the connection all at once. Not just listening literally. Don't just listen symbolically. Don't just listen allegorically. Listen with all three of these things all at the same time, so you can see the physical connection. You can see the spiritual connection. You can see the mental connection. Okay? So, now this image is the fellowcraft degree. Okay? This is where the student is symbolically passing through the underworld. This is where the student symbolically passes through the brass pillars of Jachin and Boaz. Okay? The pillar Boaz is the left pillar, which represents free will, and the terrestrial, which means earthly, right? And then the pillar of Jachin on the right represents natural law, the deterministic component. And this is dealing with the celestial. So just remember, Boaz is free will in the second degree, and Jachin is natural law in the second degree, okay? So this is dealing with the inner temple, all right? And we have to understand how to differentiate the pillars in the second degree versus the first degree. And I know it can be a little disorienting. I know it can seem a little backwards, but once you really take this information in and you start to make the connections, you really start to see the bigger picture. You really start to see why it is that way. Now, the tools on the ground that are dark, they kind of look like a dark wood color, and they're not golden anymore. They're not shiny, which means that the student has learned and used these tools. These tools are the square, the level, and the plumb rule. So the student has built already or erected the inner temple and gained the knowledge and gained the experience and has done the groundwork with these tools and has done this all enough. That's the key word, enough, to understand how to trace out the self and how to true the ashlar, because that's what it's about. It's about perfecting the ashlar, perfecting the self. But that doesn't mean that these tools can't be learned further. It doesn't mean that they have no further use, because they definitely do. But it's about understanding here at the second degree and what that means. Because these tools at this point should have been mastered enough. They should be mastered enough, which means that there has been plenty done. Okay? There has been plenty done at this point to be able to pass, because one must understand and be willfully, through free will choice, aligned to natural law and objective morality to be able to pass. So this is why the pass word is plenty, right? Because one must have plenty of knowledge. One must have plenty of understanding and wisdom regarding natural law to be able to pass, to be able to erect that spiral staircase, because it's about mastering our thoughts, it's about mastering our emotions, and it is definitely about mastering our actions. So this is the veiled allegorical system of morality. This is the way we learn the science of natural law a lot further. Okay? So, as the student has gained this plenty, then what happens is this, like I said, there's this winding staircase or a spiral staircase that leads to what's known or what's represented as the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple. All right. So the erected spiral staircase is about going from our childhood to adulthood. Now, before we go into the middle chamber, there's a few things I'd like to talk more about, including the password and plenty, because this is very, very crucial. Okay. The word plenty is denoted by what's known as the shibboleth, the word shibboleth, which in Hebrew means ear of corn. Okay? And this is very significant to the ear of corn by the waterfall, which is what we see at the bottom of this tracing board. Okay? So the password is the ear of corn. And there's some very important green language symbolism I'd like to cover here before I explain why this is so important, okay? So I want you to go to the second slide that says corn symbolism. So what is corn? Well, obviously it's a food, right? And then, what color is it typically? It's gold, right? It's yellow. And this food is a fuel. It's an energy source, right? Kind of like the sun. And it has the same color as the sun, so keep that in mind. And an ear of corn is akin to hearing in gold, symbolically. And this goes back to what I said about, ear as in the middle word of the word heart. So you have H and then ear and then T. And it's interesting because you have, in heart, you have even, it's not just ear that's in the middle. You also have hear, as in to hear, H-E-A-R, to hear. And then T actually represents power. So to, hear the power, or to hear the cross, because cross is a crux. That's the middle point. It defines the middle point, right? So to listen with the ear of the heart in the middle. So it's gold that is wrapped in green in the middle, or wrapped in the green of the heart, which is in the middle. The green, the anahata, green, right? So when we think of a corn maze, what do we think of? We think of a labyrinth, right? Like the maze cube of the mind, which is something I talked about in earlier shows, which is where we are searching for gold. The goal is to get to the center. And that's something I'm going to talk about more when I get into the circle dot symbolism, which is going to come up in the next few shows. But I want you to think about the word kernel. Okay, so the etymology of kernel means the central or most important part of something. So kernel is also part of understanding the point within the circle symbol, okay? So a kernel is akin to the heart. It's akin to the mind. It's akin to our core of being, right in the middle. And what is a kernel? It's a seed, right? A corn kernel is a seed. And then think of the zodiac being the measurement of consciousness, right? When we're thinking about the zodiac, it's the measurement of consciousness, but also it helps us understand the measurement of when to plant and when to harvest. When to plant corn, when to harvest corn. And when we plant corn, what do we do to, what do we put in the cornfields typically to scare birds away with? It's scare crows, right? Scarecrow, right? So scarecrow, when you look at a scarecrow, it's typically like Jesus on the cross, right? To ward off what? Black birds. Typically crows. Crows are black birds. And remember, Jesus is akin to Horus, right? So it's about warding off the god Set, the black bird, symbolically. So Set is the crow. So scarecrow. Horus, scarecrow. Crows come to take what? They come to take the fruits or the gold of the garden, right? So, you think of, I even found, it's really funny, this little, if you look at the slide, you'll see that the scarecrow actually looks like the scarecrow from the movie Wizard of Oz. And it's very interesting because in that movie, all the characters are missing what? The lion, the cowardly lion is missing courage. The scarecrow is missing a brain, right? The Tin Man is missing a heart. So this is all aspects of the self, right? And then, you think of the scarecrow, he's missing his brain. Well, what are we talking about here? Look at the labyrinth of the corn maze. That's the brain. Look at, the corn is associated with light, the sun. That's dealing with the higher self, the mind. The gold of the mind, because it's about understanding the alchemical process, turning base metals into gold. But the scarecrow is missing a brain. And so it's about, recovering this brain of the self. It's about finding the gold, because finding the gold is finding our brain, finding ourself. Because that's what the whole movie is about, finding the self and all these different aspects of consciousness. That movie is very allegorical, and I highly recommend anybody who has not seen that movie since their awakening, go watch that movie and really study that movie, because there is so much in it that deals with the self. I hope that I get a chance to talk about it in the future, because there's a lot that I haven't heard other people talk about. Actually, Passio did a really great job at breaking it down, but there's so much more to it. And anyway, I definitely recommend it. And then what is the corn wrapped in? It's wrapped in a husk, right? A corn husk. And what does husk mean? It means house. So, like it's just said, the temple, the corn is in the temple of the mind, of the brain. And the husk is what wraps the corn. The corn is in the husk. The corn is in the house. The gold is in the house, right? In the mind. So then you have the word cob, as in corn cob. So cob is akin to a golden phallus, a gold member, or the sun, right? It's light. Light is masculine. And obviously the cob is masculine in its, phallic shape, right? So part of the ritual of the Egyptian god Osiris, who was actually also known as a corn god, which takes place in the later part of the solar cult. Supposedly, one of his aspects was the personification of corn, because like corn, he dies and then he comes back to life every year. So it's about understanding the effigy or the model of the corn god, who was molded of earth and corn, and then he was buried with his funeral rites in the ground, and then dies there. And then, there's the hope that he might come back to life again with new crops. So there's this faith that he brings back new crops in the spring, because just as crops might come back in the spring, so will water. So will basically rejuvenation, which is what Osiris represents. And this is akin to consciousness, because consciousness is about reaping what we sow, right? We reap what we sow. So the work that we put in, we will get we'll reap the benefits of what we put in, of whatever that is, right? So it's about putting the work inwardly through the underworld so that the student may reap the benefits if plenty has been sown. So it's the same with receiving the wages of truth for, the work that the student has done to make it up the winding staircase and then into the middle chamber, symbolically, right? So now we're going to go on to the slide that says Corn God Osiris. All right. Now, learning the ritual of Osiris, being the corn god, is about learning what I just talked about, which is the depths of faith. Faith in the sense that there will be physical food for our survival from, what we plant or what we sow and fertilize in the spring, but also spiritually that, one sows seeds of knowledge.
He said the corn god, and I instantly thought of the Adventure Time episode that is titled Card Wars, which anybody who plays the video game of Card Wars or knows anything about it, with everything that he's saying about corn is just very interesting. I think that's very synchronistic. I can't wait to do a review of Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion video game. I think I'm gonna do it after I do once I finish Gex. The Gex trilogy. I think I'm gonna move on to Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion, because it's such a good game. It's such a good game. But anyways, let's keep going.
Within, so that way one may be hopefully granted the truth in return. Or also it's about hope. Hope that any seeds of truth that have been planted into others will also grow, right? Because it's about understanding that, we can't just take this information in and hold it for ourselves. We also have to plant seeds of truth in others, because it's about sovereignty. It's about, as one suffers, all suffer, meaning that we are all connected, and that if we do not spread seeds of truth, then we are allowing ourselves to stay enslaved, because we are part of everyone else who continues to stay enslaved. But also just, remember that if you plant seeds of truth, move on once you've planted those seeds of truth. Don't stay there and wait for those seeds to sprout. Hopefully you get to see them sprout. Hopefully you get to see people grow spiritually, internally, but don't count on it. Just like, don't count on your crops to grow. It all comes to faith and hope. That's really it. that your crops will grow, that it will, make it through the winter, or that in the spring when you plant that your food will grow. It's not guaranteed, but it really just comes down to hope and faith. Now, there's a representation of a certain event within Osiris's chamber at the Great Temple of Isis, and you can see this on the image in the slide, and it shows that. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from James Frazier's The New Golden Bough book, which he states that, quote, "The dead body of Osiris with stalks of corn springing from it while a priest waters the stalks from a pitcher, which he holds in his hand. The accompanying inscription sets forth that, quote, this is the form of him whom one may not name, Osiris of the mysteries, who springs from the returning waters," unquote. Taken together, the picture and the words seem to leave no doubt that Osiris was here conceived and represented as a personification of the corn, which springs from the fields after they have been fertilized by the inundation, the overflowing, the flood, right? And this, according to the inscription, was the kernel of the mysteries, the most central of the mysteries, the innermost secret revealed to the initiated, unquote. And I would say it's the innermost secret because the kernel is the most important, which means it's a principle of life. It's dealing with needing plenty of the right knowledge or water to grow into adulthood and be able to enter into the middle chamber or, grow corn. So the second degree is where one can continue to care for and water and bring more light to grow more and more fruits of wisdom, right? So just think of an ear of corn made of kernels or seeds, because that's what kernels are, right? So just think of how much corn can grow from one cob of corn. And then think of, the corn on the cob as Osiris, or Osiris's golden phallus, which is wrapped up in an ear or a husk, like a body in a coffin, right? And then buried until resurrection or erection from his wife, Isis, who helps the resurrection of Osiris to sprout in the springtime, because it's, this is about fertility rites. That's what this is about. This is how this should be looked at. Okay? So there's a lot more to it, but it's all part of, what's behind the idea of the ear of corn by the waterfall at the bottom of the Fellowcraft tracing board. Okay? So the shibboleth, the ear of corn, is meant to test whether one has plenty, because it's a pass word. It's truly a pass word in nature, because, for instance, if you don't have plenty of food to eat, then there will be starvation, which will lead to physical death. And that's why in the ritual, if you didn't say the word shibboleth right, correctly, I don't even know if I'm saying it completely correct, but what it meant was, symbolically, if you didn't say it right, you would die, right? So it's about understanding that this pass word is about understanding that saying it correctly is akin to having plenty. Well, it's the same with spiritual armor. So being armed with the right knowledge, or enough or plenty of the right knowledge and experience to be able to pass into the middle chamber beyond the veil, meaning, having what it takes to be an adult and then face the truth. So no longer needing any authority or any proxy mothers or any proxy fathers to be ruled by, spiritually, mentally, or physically. That's what it's about. And by proxy, I'm talking about government. I'm talking about the state. Now, some symbols and some words that I have been kind of talking about and I'm going to get deeper into is corn, wine, and oil, okay? And these are part of understanding the wages of this degree, the wages that we receive for the work that we put in, right? So it's really important to understand the corn, the wine, and the oil as symbols. And you will hear me talk about these three particular words and symbols as I move through. Now, I'd like to talk about the significance of the waterfall and what that represents. So let's go to the slide with the waterfall. And this is a very, very powerful symbol. So let's really think about this. What time of the year does this represent? It represents spring, right? And you could also say it also represents summer. But nonetheless, this is the time of the year that water begins to rise from rain, the April and May rain, and it begins to replenish the surrounding plant life, right? This is when ice melts and then water flows, okay? And because water flows, it flows much more time at this year. So it's symbolic. It's symbolic of, cleansing, because much of the streams have been dried up. They've gathered dirt and they've, gathered other debris. So this is about, symbolically, this is about rinsing the soul internally. It's a soul cleanse. So we're at this degree of our life to clean our internal temple, our mind, to clean it from the installments of man, the installments of government into man, into our mind. This is where the student has done the work of cleaning the mind of the belief in man's authority, especially. Also, a waterfall represents abundance, which also means plenty, right? So waterfalls bring plenty of water to do what? To replenish, to replenish life. And of course, when the water is at its lower points, or when it's, dry, this is what represents scarcity. And this is a very, very important point to keep in mind, okay? And one of the reasons is because this is the time of the year when it is dry, when it's cold, when it freezes, which permits the passing of water. And, I live around a whole bunch of, rivers and streams, and most of them do not freeze, but they do get lower. So, but there are parts of it that freeze, the parts that stay still, of course. So a waterfall is symbolically the unification of the highest to the lowest, spirit to the body, because it's a powerful downpour continuously rushing over some kind of cliff, right, down into a lower body of water. So this corresponds to our emotions being balanced. It's also part of the idea of falling in love, flowing into the heart, flowing from the higher self back into the heart, because this degree is all about the heart, right? So waterfalls can also be very overwhelming because it demonstrates a continuous power in nature, right? So it's part of understanding the generative force. And I would also say this has to do with the mystery of the deluge, you know, commencement and recommencement. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick music break, and I will see you on the other side. Middle chamber, and this is a cropped close-up of the middle chamber of the second degree tracing board. So if we look at the second degree tracing board down the hall in the middle with the checkerboard floor, we see that there is a red curtain with the Hebrew letter He above, right? Which is the 5th letter in the Hebrew alphabet. So this symbol stands for hall or temple, which is very obvious why that symbol is there, because it's obviously in a temple and it's obviously in a hall, right? And because it's the 5th letter in the Hebrew alphabet, it also branches off in early Hebrew, coming to English or from English. I'm not really sure how that works, but you can find the capital letter E in English or Greek in early Hebrew, where it comes from. And both are the 5th letter in both alphabets, okay? So this is about going in the direction east. East inward, in the temple, in the mind. And remember that the number 5 is dealing with the second degree in Masonry, but it's also the 5-pointed star, the Eastern Star, right? East Star, because this is the direction of rebirth. Rebirth of the star, which is the sun. So when you think about the time of the year in the spring equinox, you know, right after the spring equinox and the first full moon in April, right after, so the first full moon represents Isis or Mother Mary pregnant with Horus or Jesus, right? So the following Sunday is the birth of Jesus or Horus, where it also represents, so it's the birth of Jesus and Horus, but also represents Jesus coming from the tomb, or Horus coming from the tomb, or coming from the womb of Mother Mary, the womb of Isis, the womb of the full moon. Okay? So this is about rebirth, because every year Jesus is born every year. Jesus rises every year. Horus rises every year. Right? The sun rises after the first full moon in the spring equinox every year. So we have to understand that correspondence to the self in consciousness. And that Hebrew letter He is also in the same position as the capital letter G in other tracing boards. And it's so it's the G stands for gateway. And that's what it is. It's a gateway. It's a gateway to source. It's a gateway to nature. It's a gateway to the creator, the divine. So this hallway that we're looking at, this is taken on through sheer willpower, you know, sheer free will, the choice and courage to go into this place of the self. And as the student gets right up to this red curtain, there comes a moment of choice. And this curtain is really, really magical. It's a very powerful symbol to understand. So in Hebrew, it's known as the parokhet, which is spelled Parochet, and it's pronounced Parochet. Okay, so it measures at 3 inches, and 3 inches thick, right? So it's a spiritual thickness. It's a spiritual layer, spiritual armor, right? And it's 60 feet tall. This is a really tall curtain, okay? I definitely recommend going and looking at some photos of this Parochet curtain, okay? And this Parochet symbolizes the red curtain, which veils the Ark of the Covenant, what we, see down the hall in the middle chamber. So we can't see the Ark of the Covenant, right? It's hidden. It's veiled, right? So this curtain is to not only shield us from the Ark of the Covenant, from being seen, especially at a far distance because of how overwhelming and frightening it can be, to where most people would never even get up to this point if they were to see what was behind that curtain. So it's veiled to keep us from seeing this aspect of ourself, this, divine aspect of the universe, because of how frightening it is, how terrifying it is, how overwhelming it is. Because truth and the Creator are very overwhelming. Most people don't want the truth. Most people don't want to meet the Creator. So it can only be shown to those who have made it up this close internally, who have earned it, who have plenty to earn it. And this curtain separates the place known as the Holy of Holies from the palace of the Creator. And the palace is, the rest of the temple, the whole body, right? So this is symbolic of being between the flesh and the spirit, because it's dealing with mind. So to pierce the veil, or to look past this veil, or have plenty to enter past this enormous veil, is the place that most people come to and can't go any further because they have come without enough. Without enough. Not enough knowledge, not enough courage, not enough time, and definitely not enough honesty in themselves. Which is a very important part at this point. Honesty and courage. Does the student truly have plenty to be able to go into the middle chamber, or do they believe that they do? Or does the student know that they're not ready, or doesn't, really have the courage? This is where the student is met with the critical decision of their life, the critical moment of choice. This is where most people who make it this far in their spiritual journey symbolically poke their heads into the middle chamber, and then they turn around and they run 100% in the other direction. Most are terrified by what they encounter behind this curtain, which is truth, which is the divine being. But if we're being honest, it's really about personal responsibility. The ability to respond. But there's some green language there too. The ability to respawn. RESPAWN. That's some video game jargon. But it means to be given another life after dying, which is what's happening here. To be, afraid of personal responsibility. the ability to respawn spiritually, internally, to be reborn. Most want nothing to do with that. It's frightening because it means giving up dependency on authority, on government. So now we're going to move on to the middle chamber, the second slide that says middle chamber, the green middle chamber. Now, when the student is ready, they can explore the middle chamber. So there's the material, which is the outer door. Then there's the psychical, the mental, which is the inner door, which admits to the mental plane of being, which is again, it's the middle chamber, right? The mind is the controller of the body, and the body, or physical, is also the instrument of spirit. So the middle chamber, or the mind, is seen to be the middle part between the spirit and the physical, the intermediary between the physical and the spiritual, which is truly the middle chamber. So the physical can be likened to the bottom or the lower chamber, and the spirit can be likened to the upper or top chamber. And of course, the middle chamber would be the mind, the seat in between. It's the seat of the soul, and it's the heart too, right? It's the middle. It's the midpoint of the self. So we have to understand this. We have to understand the heart-based intelligence. We have to understand the mind and the heart-based intelligence being one. And that's how the ancient Egyptians understood it. Now we're going to go to the slide that says Golgotha. This temple that we're looking at, this of the second degree, the temple in the middle, between the two pillars, between the two brass pillars, this is akin to what's known as Golgotha, which is known as the place of the skull or brain. And at least from my perspective, if you look at this building or this temple in the second degree, if you look at it long enough, you will see a very abstract skull. And this is something that I saw way before I knew anything about Golgotha. So the hall would be the dark eye socket, right? And then the Hebrew He symbol with the glowing gold circular rays, this would be the eye, and the stairs would be the teeth. So it looks like like a smirk. If you look at the rail, with the stairs, it looks like teeth in a smirky kind of way, right? Now, maybe it's too abstract for anyone to see. And I'm a caricature artist. I see faces and everything. But either way, this temple is akin to Golgotha, which is the symbolic arch hill that Jesus was crucified on the cross. And if you look at the tracing board on the right, the one that is from darkness to light, and I also made a red outline of what I see as the skull. So, if you look at this without that red outline, maybe you'll see it even more, but I just wanted to outline it to show you that there's an arch that makes the top of the skull. It's within the mountain or the hill, right? So there's the arch, there's the hill, and then you have the eye, which would be the hallway, right, where the curtain is, which is what you see in the second degree tracing board. And then you have the stairs and the 5 pillars, being the composite, the Tuscan, the Doric, the Corinthian, and the Ionic, look like teeth, right? And then the incense burning in the middle looks like the nose. So And I think even if you look more abstractly, it looks like maybe that white box, or even that other, the white box would be the eye. So you have a white eye and a dark eye. And that's very symbolic too. But the point is that there's a skull in the hill, in the arch. So that's Golgotha. Now, this is all dealing with the limbic system area of the human brain, the mid part. So it's a cross. It's a defining midpoint, right? Now, the archetypal Jesus symbolically is crucified on the cross,
now,
right, which is the midpoint. And just one thing I want to say before I go any further is, when I'm talking about Jesus, I'm talking about Jesus symbolically. I'm not talking about Jesus being alive historically in the actual flesh, okay? This is all dealing with the symbolic Jesus, the archetype of Jesus, okay? So don't, like I said, you can think about it literal, that's fine. But think about this symbolically and allegorically, right? So within or on Golgotha, the hill, or arc or arch hill, is crucified this Jesus on the cross. So crucifix means cross with a corpus or body of Christ, right? So when thinking of the cross, the vertical line is akin to spirit, and the horizontal line is akin to the physical, okay? Where they cross is akin to mind. The point in the middle is akin to mind. And in the ancient Egyptian world, this was called anking or anking. However you want to call it. I say Ankh. So this is what the Ankh represents, which is unity, or crossing of spirit and body, the mind. It's the crossing of the sacred feminine and sacred masculine. Okay? Now, we're going to go to the slide that says 33. So, what's analogous to the 33 degrees in Freemasonry and the 33 years of Jesus's life, at which point he's, crucified, symbolically, is akin to the 33 vertebrae of the spine, which has to be known as, or to, symbolize Jacob's ladder. And from the pineal gland, from there, is secreted a peculiar fluid, which can be looked at as, the blood from Christ during the crucifixion. Basically, this is where you get the anointed oil. So the skull of the self being anointed by the crucifixion within. So Israel is symbolically the land of milk and honey. And it's really important to understand that Israel is Israel, which are aspects of consciousness that are tied in with the brain, which is something we'll get into a little further as we go through these shows, but I'm not going to get into it on this show. It's a lot to break down. But it's important to note here, because Israel is symbolically the land of milk and honey, and there are two chemicals secreted by the pineal gland called serotonin and melatonin. And the color of melatonin is white, like milk, and the color of serotonin is golden, like honey. Okay? So we have to look at this place of Israel, being located in the brain, or as the brain, secreting this milk and honey, or this spinal fluid from the brain, from the pineal, or from the cerebrum. It also comes from the pituitary gland. But the point is the land of milk and honey is the pineal gland. And this secreted fluid is a secret oil. And secret comes from secretion. And this secret oil, something the ancient Romans and Greeks called stuff of life, this drains or flows down the sacred direction of the 33 vertebrae, down from heaven or the brain, down through the nervous system, and then towards the sacrum and root chakra of the body. Okay? So between the stomach and the groin. And this sacred oil is called the Christ, or Christos, which means anointed in Greek, which then translates to Messiah. So keep that in mind. Because remember, I said Messiah means Messiah. You are the Messiah of your life. You are the hero of this journey, of this life journey. And in this area between the pelvis, this is where there are 5 fused vertebrae bones at the bottom of the spine, being the sacrum plexus. And also keep that 5 number in mind, because this is part of understanding the second degree. Okay? So this bone forms at the base of the spinal column, and it is also what's known as the spear of passion, which pierces and passes the roots of the spinal nerve through the sacrum, which are symbolically the roots of the tree of life. So if you look at the whole nervous system of the human body, it is akin to the tree of life. You are the tree of life. So studying the tree of life is studying you. So it is the center that helps nourish and feed the lower vertebrae of the spine. And the sacrum and coccyx bones dig the graves or holes for the seeds or the created things. So this point is symbolized by the grave digger's spade, which is something I'm going to get into here in a few minutes. But the currents and forces are working through these lower spinal nerves, which must be transmuted and lifted or ascended upward, up the spine, to feed the altar fire, the upper fire at the positive or upper end of the spine, which is, something I'm going to define a little bit more as I go through these slides, okay? So in the Book of the Dead, there are words spoken over the Jed pillar, which was the symbol that meant stability and represented Osiris's spine. And this was placed at the throat of the deceased on the day of their burial. And these words go, quote, "Raise yourself up, Osiris. You have your backbone once more, a weary-hearted one. You have your vertebrae." Because this is a ritual for being spiritually at death within, but it's about saying you have another chance to be reborn. Okay? And you're going to understand this a lot more as you listen to the rest of what I'm going to say. Okay? So this region is where this secreted Christos oil flows to, right? And I think anyone listening knows that the story of Jesus, we know that he is born in where? Bethlehem, right? And Bethlehem translates to house of bread, right? So supposedly in our chakra energy centers, especially within the solar energy center, the solar plex, right above the sacrum chakra, the sacrum energy center, is where theoretically there is what is known as a seed germ, which is planted every month, or it's already there, but then every month.
Alright, so the infamous Snoop Dogg spilled my grog. And so while the episode is playing, I'm going to go and pour myself another grog, and I'll be back in about 5 minutes to continue the grind. I don't know if you guys have been noticing what I'm doing, but I'm just collecting a bunch of junk. More specifically, I'm looking for concrete to store in my inventory and then take it to the workshops. And there's a perk where you can connect all of your workshops together. Once you connect all your workshops together, you have all of your resources and materials in. You have access to every single material in the entire game at every single workshop, basically. And your potential for building things becomes absolutely insane. And I want to watch some guides on how to build some really awesome sanctuaries, how to build some really awesome outposts. But like I said, this is a very long episode, and it's about to hit my bedtime, so I'm going to pour myself a grog, continue to listen to this episode, and stay tuned and stay gold. I'll be right back.
This particular area of the body, when the moon is in a person's astrological sign, where the sun was when they're born, where you're born, or when you were born, this is when this seed is activated, or this seed germ is activated by this Christos oil, this fluid, right? This blood, this plasma, right? And this is about the alchemical process that can be understood by understanding one of the great axioms that within everything is the seed of everything, right? And somebody who I really think understood this very well was Manly P. Hall. And I'm not saying I completely understand how this works. I definitely have not found enough information to really understand this process, because, even Manly P. Hall gets into saying that there really isn't anything that can see this actual seed or the seed germ, because there's nothing that can magnify that great to be able to see that small of a thing, right? But he says in this, I really like what he says in this quote, where he says that by means, and this is a slide, by the way, so if you go to the slide that says Manly P. Hall at the bottom, he says, by means of this art, being alchemy, the seed which is within the soul of a stone may be made to germinate so intensively that in a few moments a diamond is grown from the seed of itself. If the seed of the diamond were not in the marble, granite, and sand, a diamond could not be grown therefrom. But as the seed is within all things, a diamond may be grown out of any other substance in the universe. In the same substances, however, it is easier to perform this miracle because in them these germs have already been long fertilized and are thus nearly prepared for the vivifying process of the art of alchemy, is what he's talking about. So the art of alchemy is basically copying the alchemy of nature. So for instance, nature creates diamonds from pitch black carbon. As far as we know, I don't really know how that works, but it's about understanding that diamonds have been alchemically processed by nature from the black carbon. And of course it takes, millions of years to accomplish, but as the saying goes, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished, right? So it's very interesting, very, very interesting information, because here's the thing. This is occult anatomy. Occult anatomy is very hard for anyone to really know. But the point is to understand that this information is not easy. I don't have all the answers. I can't explain all this, to the fullest, because it's, the information is scattered and a lot of it is occulted. It's hidden from us. So again, we are just trying to bring this information out onto the table, and some people know this information better than I do, or better than we do, and that's okay, but I'm just laying it out there, and I'm showing you the correlations, I'm showing you the connections, I'm making connections, and I'm making them to my best ability, because I've done the research, I've done it enough, and I see what makes sense, and I'm showing you what I know to make sense, but it doesn't mean that I have the full picture, because the full picture doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for us, at least in the vernacular, it doesn't exist.
Squirt's a good boy. Snoopy
But,
ain't a fucking
putting this information out there, this is what helps us come to a better, well-rounded conclusion.
Gorgeous.
Okay? So, what I'm saying, you can take the information that is valuable, that makes sense to you, and you build off of that. But I will admit that, this type of information is harder to understand, for me anyway, okay? I'm speaking for myself. But it does make sense in this ritual, in this science that I'm putting down, in this, this type of information that deals with this type of symbolism and allegory. It does make sense, okay? So we're going to go back to the slide that says 33. And this Christ seed germ is born in Bethlehem, right? The place where the Son or Christ life force is seated within you. It's already there. It's already there. The solar plexus. Think about that. The solar, the sun is seated within you. There's no coincidence that your why it's called the solar plex, right? Because it's about understanding the visible light spectrum, yes, but it's about understanding the energy centers. What part of your body is, sun is our fuel, right? Well, our stomach is part of understanding the solar plexus. We need fuel. That's where we get fuel from, because it's our stomach. Okay? So there's a lot to this Christ seed germ, life force. Okay? So the stomach region is for what? It's for bread, which is a gift, because we need food, right? It's about food. I mean, it's symbolic. I'm not saying you need bread to live, okay? This isn't about diet. This isn't about health necessarily. It is about health, but it's health in a symbolic way. But it's about understanding bread as a symbol more than anything. And bread in your body goes to your stomach because you're hungry, right? So this is a gift, the gift of fuel to the stomach from the Creator. And it also relates to corn, because corn is a grain. Corn is bread. Grain is bread. So to sow this grain in hopes that more will come, right? So this is the kernel. This is the kernel. It's the gold. Solar, kernel. It's the gold. The corn is the gold. The seed. The kernel is the seed. The germ, the Christ germ, the seed germ. So bread, when you think about bread, house of bread, Bethlehem, bread also means to share, to break bread, right? To break bread. So it's symbolic. Well, the solar plex, the solar part of the body, means light. So it means to break, to get that, to gather that light, to break bread, is to share light, to share bread, to share wealth, to share Christ, because Christ means light. Right? But once the seed is potentially germinated by the Christos oil once a month, there can be a transmutation that causes this oil to rise back up the spine, spiral-like back up the spine, back up Jacob's ladder, symbolically, to the brain, to the temple, back to the spiritual house, back to the Golgotha, into the inner or middle chamber of physically in the hypothalamus, the hypothalamus area of the brain, where it basically, this fluid basically sits for 2.5 to 3 days, and then it is resurrected to the pineal gland. This is where it generates DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which activates dormant brain cells, which is what makes the brain activate in a higher frequency. So it's part of understanding the light of the world. That's what the light of the world means, to activate those dormant cells, to activate the pineal gland, to make the pineal light up. And, there's also some language of the birds at this part, because the thalamus region is the diencephalon area, the thalamus, the cave of the thalamus, and right in the middle of our brain, which is part of understanding the third ventricle. It's egg-like in its shape, right? So it's right in the middle of the brain, and it has this egg-like shape. And the brain acts as a incubator, which in ancient rituals, once the egg hatched or rebirthed, the inner bird would be released into the upper world, the spiritual world, right? Because it's about the levitation, to defy gravity of the lower world, right? So spirituality is about levitation, which is bird-like. This is the language of the birds. So there's no coincidence that there's this egg-like shape in the middle of our brain. Okay? So it's a type of inner deluge that's taken place, from the brain to the sacrum back to the brain. Like, life, death, rebirth, and then ascension. The sun rising, springing, and then, in the summer at the highest, and then falling, and then back down to the winter solstice, death, right? Cold, dry, right? So it's all akin to this journey is all akin to spiritual wages, right? So when thinking of having plenty of corn to eat after sowing or seeding the fields, it's the same with our energy and what we do with this Christos oil, the blood of Christ. Will our desires deplete this oil, living in a low vibration? Or will we, selflessly sacrifice our base desires to bring that Christ oil back to the higher self, the higher vibration, the Holy of Holies within our inner church, our esoteric church, where it can be the most powerful, the most beneficial to our transformation or our evolution? Will our inner waterfall be abundant when it returns to sprout that inner kernel? Or will it be dry and dirty from all the lower living, the lower vibration, living in our lower self? Not working on the self, not giving time and care to the self or to the Creator. So when arriving at the 33rd vertebrae bone of the spine, this is really interesting because this 33rd vertebrae bone is called the Atlas bone, the Atlas vertebrae, which translates to the bearer of the heavens. That's what Atlas means, the bearer of the heavens, because the bone that is situated right below the skull, that holds the skull, that holds the brain, it's holding up the heavens. It is the head and the brain are the heavens. They are akin to the heavens because it's the upper. It's dealing with the upper region of the temple. And something else that I thought was really cool. And it's not something that I have seen, and this could be an actual thing that has been talked about in some kind of ritual, or maybe it actually is a symbol in some part of our history, but I noticed when I was looking at this bone, this backbone, the spine, and then looking at the pelvis, it looks like a caterpillar. The spine looks like a caterpillar going down into what looks like an upward pointing butterfly that's getting ready to go up, right? So, to me, it's no coincidence that it looks like that, because a caterpillar turning into a butterfly is transformation, right? It is a metamorphosis of the self. So this lower pelvis bone, if you look at the, if you look at the pelvis in a different picture, go to Google, look up a pelvis bone, you will see it looks like a butterfly and it's pointing upward. And, from the butterfly is the caterpillar, but it should be, but the way I look at it is the caterpillar is going down, right? Because that's what a caterpillar does, symbolically going down to open up to be raised as a butterfly. So anyway, it's just a little observation I had. It has nothing to do with anything that I've learned. It's just an observation, but it has a correspondence. Now, this whole Christos oil process, I think it's very important to understand how it works and how you can see how it works, because it is about rejuvenation. When you think of fasting, the reason it's called fasting is right in the word, because fasting is about health. It's about rejuvenating the health, right? It's a detox cleanse. And it's the fastest way to cleanse the body. It's the fastest way to rejuvenate the whole body. And that's the truth. It's the best way. It's the best way to rejuvenate the body if it's ill, if it's going through. I mean, I'm not saying like other things can't help, but I'm saying fasting overall is the best way to detox. It's the fastest way. And then you can also do deep meditation. And what meditation does is it relieves stress. And stress is one of the things that keeps this oil from rejuvenating. It keeps you in the lower part, the lower region, because it keeps you in fight or flight if you're stressed. If you're always stressed, you're always in your lower frequency, your root or or even your sacrum. Okay? So you don't want to stay there. You want to do deep meditation. However you do your meditation, you want to do it to relieve stress and allow those energy centers to open up and realign. And then there's also eating healthier. Eat more greens, eat less sugar, eat less processed foods, less drugs, hard drugs especially. Drink less alcohol or don't drink alcohol. Cut it out of your diet. And, just really not abusing anything is really what needs to be said. I'm not telling you what to do with your body. You do what you want with your body. But if you want to rejuvenate your body, these things can help. And one of the other things that can be done is, not abusing sex, because sex is a sacred act. You're exchanging fluids, right, with someone. Sex is a very, very sacred act, and it should not be abused. And so many people are abusing this because people are abusing so many other things like porn. Porn is definitely not something you want to, if you're trying to do this sacred act within yourself, with this sacred Christos oil. You do not want to be watching porn and doing, because porn also is what leads to not appreciating this sacred act with a sexual partner. Okay? So it is, and again, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to judge anybody. I'm just saying that if we really want to grow to our better self, our better version of ourself, we're going to have to recognize the abuse of these things. We're going to have to find a way to get away from abusing things and get away from things that are not serving the higher self, because that's what it's about. We're trying to get to the higher self, and we can't get there when we're stuck in our root chakra, doing all these base things, these base desired things. Just having sex just to do it, and that's the other thing, like semen retention. I don't really know enough about it, but I do know that it has to do with this sacred fluid, because it's about rejuvenating the self and having the energy to go the distance and not just wasting it, right? Just for the desire. And it's not easy, but females and males, there's a similar thing going on. But I speak more for males because I know myself more, but I know females when it comes to because we're all tied to the moon and the moon cycles, right? And this sacred fluid is definitely governed. It's governed by the moon cycles. I mean, look at females, they have their periods, 12, 13 times a year, right? Well, it's the same with moon cycles. There's 13 moon cycles per year, right? So it's about understanding that we are governed somewhat by the moon. And I mean, we're made of water, we're made of fluid. So the moon definitely has something to do with that rejuvenation. that cleanse, that inner cleanse, and that inner, germination of the seed within, right? So it's about not becoming depleted of this sacred oil and becoming dry and dead, right? You know, we don't want to become dry and dead. We want to become alive and thrive and, aligning with nature, doing what's right. Because it's easy. It's too easy to do these other things. These base desires are easy. They're easy things. And I get it. We should be able to live and have an easy, nice life, but that's not really true reality, because that leads to enslavement. And enslavement is not the right direction. It's the wrong direction in life. The right direction is becoming the hero and overcoming these desires and moving up to the higher self to really, be aligned and see how beautiful you truly are. Because staying in the lower frequency, we never really get to see how beautiful we are. We're too far being in the low. But when we're in the high, we get to look all around. We get to see the whole beauty. Just think about being at the bottom of a mountain, and the only thing you can see is just that one side of the mountain. That's beautiful, right? And you only get to see the lower part on that one side. But if you climb up that mountain, it's hard, it's arduous, and it is not easy. It's easy to stay at the bottom of the mountain, but it's not easy to go to the peak of the mountain, where when you get to the peak, you can see every direction. You can see all around the whole mountain. You can see all the way down the mountain on all sides, and you can see all the way out to other mountains, other peaks, and you really get to see the beauty. And you also get to feel that beauty of, you get to appreciate what it took to get there, because you went through the ascension. You went through that journey to get up to that apex of the self. So anyway, I just thought that's a very important point that I wanted to make. And from there, I am going to ask you guys to go to the next slide, which says Fisher King. Fisher King symbolism, okay? Now, I am in no way a scholar at the Fisher King, but I have studied it enough to show you the connection of the Fisher King. And I think it's really, really a very important part of understanding the second degree, okay? So, like I said, I'm not going to go too far into this Fisher King myth, but it is a very vast subject of study, and I definitely recommend anybody to look into this very deeply, because it has a lot to do with our journey. The important part of understanding the science of our journey, our internal journey. Okay, but I just want to make mention of it here, and it's all dealing with the second degree. So the second degree is dealing with the myth of the Fisher King, or the fish, or the fishman, or the inundation. Okay, so it's about the hero's journey from life that is falling to death, and then to resurrection, and then to ascension. Okay, and we can understand this journey as the Christos oil falling down the spine to the sacrum and the root, and then flowing back up the spine to the midbrain, the limbic system, okay, to Golgotha, right? Also, the symbol of the Vesica Pisces is a fish symbol, right? It's made of two circles or arcs that are halfway overlapping or intersecting each other and forming an inner or middle space, or a shape in between that looks like the shape of a fish, right? So then, where does this Fisher King originate from? Well, early Christian doctrine adopted the fisherman or fishers of men as the symbol of what's known as the Ishtas or the Ishtas. So it's spelled in two different ways, Icthys or Ichthus, but they both mean the fish, okay? And in Jessie L. Weston's book, From Ritual to Romance, she has this whole chapter dedicated to the investigation of the Fisher King, which illustrates all the conjecture of where this myth comes from, which is really important because it's to help us investigate, mostly, if not completely, what is dealing with all solar cult mythology that's been passed down and adopted in different religions through similar rituals that are dealing with this particular, Fisher King myth. But what Albert Churchward says in his book, The Origin and Evolution of Religion, is that Ishtas, the fish, is originally pre-Christian and pre-solar cult, which means that this is a remnants that comes from the stellar cult, as Ishtas the fish was originally Sebek Horus, the earliest fishman known to the mythology. So we're going to go to the slide that says Sebek Horus. So this answers Jessie L. Weston's mystery quest for the origins of the Fisher King, at least from how I understand it. But what she's demonstrating is the advancements and also exposing from darkness of the self. Okay, so when looking at the Pisces house of the zodiac, this is about the Fisher King because that is the time of the year that winter turns into spring, which symbolizes rebirth and regeneration. But also, this is about, literally this is when there is rebirth and rejuvenation to the land, especially in the north. Okay? So let's go back to the Fisher King symbolism slide, okay? So the Fisher King is immortal and one who fishes, meaning, fishing out life from death, from, darkness and the abyss of water, or, what makes men out of fish, okay? So it's about fishing out life from the first body of the self that no longer serves the self, going from child to adult. So, like I said with the butterfly, going from a caterpillar to a butterfly. But it's about, the king who awaits the hero with the sacred Holy Grail, which needs to have the care of the hero, being you, the Christ. Because, the Fisher King is the wounded king. The Fisher King is the wounded king. The land is wounded. The land needs rejuvenation. Okay? But this is the inner Christ in you. The inner hero in you who has to help the king, who is ready to bring the grail back to the brain or to the temple in order to, bring life back to the land and, heal the Fisher King. That's what it's about. The dryness of the self. We have to heal that. Because the Fisher King, we have to understand the Fisher King is the king of the self. So the first king is deposed of the self. That's why we fall, right? And then the Fisher King is there to, catch us in the net, right? So when thinking about the human body as a temple and the spine and the chakras, I want you to think about the Christos oil flowing down like a waterfall to the root chakra. And this is the place where the Fisher King is wounded. because in the story he is actually wounded. He's wounded in the groin, the root. Right? So this is the place where the Fisher King has symbolically been hit with a lance or a spear in the groin or the leg, which is, it's near the root chakra, right? So we have to understand, if we're looking at this slide, we'll see that, the spear looks like the gravedigger's spade or the spine, right? Because it's about the spine, or the spine looking like the spear that is hitting the fish. The fish is what is in between, especially the feminine part of ourself, or the feminine, even in the feminine yoni, or the yonical symbol being the Vesica Pisces. It hits right in that middle part where the fish is. Okay? So there's a lot to this. So this is where the Fisher King has symbolically been hit with the lance, right? So symbolically, this is the spine as the gravedigger's spade shovel, which is digging a grave for death. Or it can be looked at as a spear hitting a fish in the nature womb, like I just said with the Vesica Pisces. That is the nature womb, okay? So this is about being at the point of suffering and, either avoiding truth and living in, hedonistically and base desires, or beginning the deeper search for the truth and healing. So being wounded is akin to darkness and drought and dryness and infertility. Kind of like when, if you've ever seen the movie Lion King, when Scar takes over the Pride Lands, after he deposes the king, right? The father king, right? He deposes the first king. So the first king is killed by the brother. So Scar can be likened to Set, deposing the king. And this king, Mufasa, once he dies, Simba, the son, the next son in line, the next king in line, is found in a desert, wounded, right? Wounded. And what's happening while so there's two things happening. While he is wounded, he is the king that is wounded in the desert, the dry lands. He's dying. He's wounded from his father dying, because he believes that he killed his father too. But the point is that while he's in the desert is the beginning of when Scar in the Pride Lands, the land is dying, because the true king is not there. He's the false king. He's the king of the base desires, right? So Simba, being the symbol, is found in the desert by Timon and Pumbaa, who are akin to the fools. And in the story of the Fisher King, the fool brings water to the king, right? To the hero of the story, the king. And this is very interesting, because this is also akin to the Grail, because you need water to not be dry internally, right? But this is what gives him life, found by the fools, by Timon and Pumbaa. They definitely act like fools, but they just magically show up. And that's kind of something it's a very interesting part of life, when, the universe brings people into our life at the right time. It's bizarre. It's beautiful, but it's very magical and bizarre. But also keep in mind that April Fool's Day is in Aries, which comes right after Pisces, which comes after the fish. So the fish would be when right before, Simba would be the fish that is, coming to the bottom, and in Pisces, but then is found by the fools in April Fools, being the house of the ram, the arch, right? Because it's about the rising of the king. Okay? Now, Timon and Pumbaa help him with water. Water is akin to the Holy Grail, because without water, then the lands stay dry, and there isn't any, potential for the rise of the king, which is the rejuvenation of the land. So the king needs to go through growth to an adult. The Simba needs to go through growth as an adult. And then, of course, Nala, the girl that he likes, the girl, a lioness, she comes, and she's part of understanding the care that is part of the Grail, to go back up, to go back. She convinces him to go back to the Pride Land because they need rejuvenation. They're dry. Everyone is unhappy. The land is not doing well. So this is part of understanding the internal self. That's what this movie helps us do, if we know what to look for, if we know that it's about an inner journey of the self. Another movie I just want to make mention of right now is that put this Fisher King or Fisherman ritual into this story. It also takes place in Africa, which is the Black Panther, the Marvel movie, the Black Panther. So when you think of Black Panther, he becomes king, and then he is deposed. He becomes king on a waterfall. He's deposed off of a waterfall, right? So it's symbolic. He's deposed off of a waterfall by Killmonger, right? Killmonger is akin to Set. So he deposes the king, and Black Panther, his father actually was deposed as well. In an earlier Marvel movie, his actual father was deposed, or he was killed. But then Black Panther is deposed off the waterfall, and then he is found by a fisherman, and then he's laid in ice. Like, that's what fishermen do. They lay fish in ice. And then what happens? The girl that he likes, she goes to where Killmonger is burning all the ayahuasca. That's what I'm going to call it, ayahuasca. I can't remember what it's called in the movie, but it's basically like a psychedelic that they take in this movie to help them see the underworld. But the point is that she goes and takes one of the ayahuasca plants, and then before he burns them all. And what that means is, when he's burning it, that means that the kingdom is starting to burn down. It's starting to symbolically dry out. But then she takes that. She is the care. She runs back and, finds out that Black Panther is still alive. She gives it to him, and then he has his rebirth, his reawakening. And then he becomes strong again, and then he starts to work his way up to, as Horus, to fight Set, Killmonger, right? So then he rises up, he finds him, and then he kills him, and then there's an elevator scene where he's rising up. And then the kingdom is starting to, this is when the kingdom is starting to flourish again, to be rejuvenated. And then once he gets up there, there's a symbolic sunset, where the sun is setting, because the sun is, the sun, it's a little backwards in the movie. It's because that's what Hollywood does. They are sorcerers. They like to switch things around, where they're not really giving you the real, because Killmonger was saying the realest things in this movie, but he was the villain, you see. So Hollywood likes to do this, reverse magic or dark magic and make you like the villain and, you know, not really think about the true hero. So it's, you have to be able to understand what you're looking at. That's why it's important to understand the origins of these rituals, the origins of these characters, because the more that we understand these symbols and the more that we understand these rituals, and how they evolve, right, how they change, and, you know, really just understanding their origins, then we will have a better picture of what is being said in these movies, and we'll see how people are being heavily distorted in their minds by what these movies are pushing into their subconscious, into our subconscious, right? So it's about becoming conscious of what is being fed into our minds. And that's what this show is doing. You know, that's what this information is helping us do. Okay? So these movies, they help us understand that a healthy you, spiritually and mentally and physically, is a contribution to a healthy people. And a healthy people is a healthy land. So it's a correspondence. And this is why the individual is so powerful to, you know, changing the world in either a negative way or a positive way. So that's what true Freemasonry is all about. Because we have to understand that as one becomes higher in degrees of Freemasonry, one becomes more, you know, dry and negative for the land and the people and the community, or one becomes more positive and more of an influence to others because you have more sacred knowledge. That's why this is so important, because we're getting our asses kicked collectively because more people know this knowledge who are using it for the wrongdoing. They're not using it for freedom. They're not using it to help their fellow brothers and sisters. They're using it to get a leg up on others because they know that others don't know this information, and they know that they can basically live high above and just completely feed truth with a twist, which is part of understanding sorcery. Okay, so this is dark psychology that they're waging against us. And the more that we become aware of this type of information, the more that we build our spiritual armor, and therefore we can, you know, become a stronger resistance. So that way we don't have to be slaves to their propaganda and to their mind control. Now we're going to go to the slide that says Rise of the Hero. So the rise of Kundalini energy, the rise of the spirit, the rise of consciousness, and being able to go into the middle chamber and beyond that curtain, the parokit, you know, going into the Holy of Holies. This Kundalini energy is, it's also akin to the lotus, because as its roots are rooted in the fields below, or the root chakra, it rises symbolically to maturity, you know, the adult in the brain, where it blossoms, which is also akin to the rose cross and Rosicrucianism. But it symbolically blossoms, which is about budding or opening within and finding the gold pollen, which equates to the Shambhala, which is found in the heart of the lotus. And Shambhala means, you know, the sacred city, or the Holy of Holies, the place of the Creator, the place of the divine. And this is also the corn, you know, rising up to the brain as the gold that is, you know, found within the husk of the house. Because the roots are in the chakra, the corn rises up, the gold rises up, symbolically up the spine, the stalk rises up, and then it is unfolded as corn within. So it's about finding, you know, the kernel, the corn, right? So the physical place in the brain that this takes place in is, something I already mentioned earlier, which is the thalamus, which literally translates to receptacle of a flower or inner chamber. And that also means, marriage or wedlock. But it's no coincidence that this word, the origins, the etymology of thalamus translates to the receptacle of a flower, right? Because it's waiting on the flowering of the self. It's waiting on the corn. It's waiting on the kundalini to rise to its highest point. It's waiting on the lotus flower to come up and bloom, right? Or the rosy cross, right? So this is about seeing what is spiritually occulted. It's about seeing what is physically occulted because it's internal anatomy, which is occulted. It's hidden, right? And what is evident, what we can all see on the outside, is the exoteric. But we have to see the similar allegorical story and significance in all three at the same time, right? We have to see the physical. We have to see the internal, the occult internal, and the spiritual internal, right? So it's dealing with the exoteric and the esoteric. And by becoming conscious of this is about becoming conscious of the self, becoming aware of what is happening within, which helps us understand what is happening outwardly. And then what is happening outwardly is corresponding to what's happening inwardly, right? So nature is a mirror. It's a mirror.
Let's see what you got.
Now, as one has spiritually made it this far, then it's about going, symbolically walking or passing through the paroket or the veil of the middle chamber of the second degree, and then into the third, raised into the third degree, right? So I put the third degree tracing board at the end, one of the slides, so you can see the curtain in the middle, right? The curtain is right in the middle. So both of these degrees, you see the curtain in the middle. So you're going into the second degree curtain, going through that, and then now you're coming out into the third. And I think this is a really good place to end the show. And I thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys have learned a lot. I hope you're inspired. And if you're interested in more shows and presentations or news, please go to CubbyWhole.com, and also make sure to check out my new video show, Outcasting, where I do short episodes explaining many different critical topics, a lot more simplified and refined. And if you have any questions regarding the topics for these shows, please email me at cubbyhole@mail.com. Also, if you have found value within the CubbyWhole, any of the donations that are made are always appreciated. And, one thing I want to say is that if you can't make a donation, really, like I said many, many times, the donation is all for the upkeep of the website. But really what is the true donation that I wish more people would, because it's nice to get help, of course, financially, right? It helps a lot with this cause, right? But what's more important is you learning this information and understanding this information enough to where you're making your own content.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you making your own content is really what is contributing to the bigger solution. Okay? Because the solution is about spreading this type of knowledge, especially with, knowledge regarding natural law. Okay? because that's what's going to make a positive change in this world. And, hoping that we inspire others to do this work, to understand this work, and then share it, spread it, break the bread, share the bread, right? Share the Christ, share the light, right? Because that's what it's about. Sharing what we know and understand, so that way we can make a bigger impact in this world and see things change for the better, right? So, that being said, I'm your host, Nate Cap. Thank you for listening, and keep in mind to do no harm, defend truth, and keep transcending dogma.
All right, that was a doozy. That was a doozy of an episode, and like he said, make your own content. Study natural law. Study morality. Start making your own content. A lot of people are just, YouTube's blowing up with GTA 6 content right now. Anybody who is making any content on GTA 6, their channel is being blown up. Even people who are reacting to people who have more subscribers than him, like Quasar. He's just reacting to videos of people who have more subscribers than he does, and he's just reacting to these videos, and he's just hating on them. And a lot of his hate is justified with, why are people even buying GTA 6 you don't even have discs, meaning it's not even a physical edition yet, meaning that this game is going to be so bad that they don't care if it's going to be preserved in physical media. That is what Rockstar is saying to us about GTA 6. They don't give a crap because they know the game is going to suck. They know the game is going to come out extremely buggy. As I've said before, look at the GTA trilogy definitive, quote-unquote, definitive edition, right? Which is one of their most recent releases by Rockstar. And Rockstar issued out that entire trilogy to a video game company, a video game team that makes mobile games for cell phones. So Rockstar doesn't care about video games. They don't care. Same thing with Bethesda. Even though I'm playing Fallout 4, Bethesda does not give a crap about their fans. They don't care about their video games. They don't care about their legacy. They don't give a shit. The only thing they care about, to quote director Billy in the TV show Entourage, the only thing they care about is money. So that's why, podcasts like CubbyWhole Podcast are imperative. They are imperative. I mean, you heard it in this episode. He said, I don't care about your money. I don't care about your money. That's what he said. He said, go make your own content. Make your own content talking about natural law and morality and spirituality. Make your own content about, studying these occult being hidden. That's what the word means. Occult. Study these occult subjects and topics. Hidden. Study these hidden topics. Yeah, you're busy. Very exciting. So am I. I'm talking about more important stuff, NPC. That's why I love the CubbyWhole. He said it. I don't care about your money.
I wanted so much more from my life than this. Ugh.
Oh my God, this lady just keeps talking. We all wanted so much more from our life than slavery, which is what is going on to this day. Slavery. People are going to college, right? People are farther solidifying their communist indoctrination education, right? And people still believe in college. Even Jordan Peterson, Brett Weinstein, and his wife, I forget her name. Dude, these guys have been talked about it. Before Joe Rogan been compromised, Joe Rogan had Brett Weinstein and his wife on the episode, and they talked about how the university is compromised. Jordan Peterson has talked about how the university is compromised. And guess what? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson is still teaching at universities. Hello. He is still collecting that paycheck. And he, 4 or 5 years ago, he was saying that the university was compromised. And these guys are still in university. They still have their doctorates. They're still, they're still holding on to these titles, these ego identification titles. And that's all they are, right? Just like when people hold their ego identification titles of their job. I am a police officer. I am a chef. Or even, I am a mom. I am a father. People identify with these ego identifications. It's horrible. It's horrible. But anyways, I hope you guys learned something this episode. I started tuning out in the last hour and a half because I'm just so tired. Started tuning out, and I've already heard this episode. I have heard this episode. I've heard all of these episodes multiple times. 2, 3, 4 times. I'm getting out of this area because this Darcy is just pissing me off. I've heard all these episodes 2, 3, 4 times, and like I said, I'm so glad to be redoing these episodes, getting back into it so I can knock out the CubbyWhole podcast, grinding with CubbyWhole podcast, and move on to another podcast. I mean, as CubbyWhole releases more episodes, since like I said, I have permission to do these episodes. I got permission from both of the hosts of CubbyWhole podcast, and I got the permission. I'm very proud of that. Very proud of that fact that I got their permission. So, I hope to wrap up all these episodes. This is episode 57 that just got wrapped up. And the CubbyWhole podcast is now on episode 80s. They're in the 80s, 90s. And I'm just getting in the late 50s now. So there's going to be a lot of episodes to grind out. I think I'm going to keep using Fallout 4, even though it kind of bores me to death at this point. So we'll wrap up CubbyWhole podcast, and then I hope to do Wake the Dead podcasts on Sea of Thieves. Hopefully Sea of Thieves, stays relevant, which is why I feel like I need to, really get all these CubbyWhole podcast episodes out and record them, and then that way I can move on and get to Wake the Dead podcast and do Sea of Thieves while it is still quote unquote a live service game. And even if hopefully, if Sea of Thieves ever dies, or if Sea of Thieves ever goes anywhere or gets, quote unquote delisted, hopefully there's a way. And I'm praying to God. I'm praying to fucking God that this is a thing. If Sea of Thieves ever disappears, hopefully there's still a way that we can still play Safe Seas and still just play the regular game. That is my dream. But we don't live in a perfect world. And it is past my bedtime, and Squirt is behind me snoring to death. So, with that being said, the movie Backrooms that I've been telling everybody to go see, not necessarily on YouTube, but in real life, I've been telling everybody to go see Backrooms. It's been breaking records. It broke the record of A24. Backrooms is right now, as we speak, A24's most highly grossed movie, meaning that Backrooms has made A24 the most money, the most profit at this time speaking. So I'm very excited. That is awesome. And there's an extension of the Backrooms coming out July 3rd. I'm pretty sure is the date. So stick around for that. Anybody who loves the Backrooms as much as me. Jay Dyer has broken down the allegory of Backrooms, and I've done book reviews of Jay Dyer's books here on the channel, Beagle Eye Book Reviews. Check out the playlist. Jay Dyer does the Esoteric Hollywood books. Fantastic breakdowns of modern day films and early films, especially getting into the Kubrick films. And that is my cue to go to bed. I think the edibles are hitting. The edibles are hitting. 2 hours and 30 minutes. So we had some stragglers. We had some people in and out of the stream. I appreciate you guys. If you want to support the channel, use code BeagleEyeVision at w.gg for 10% off your entire purchase. W literally has its jitterless energy powder. Energy drinks. I wake up, drink Dubby, and I get no jitters throughout the entire day. Even if I do double Dubby, I literally get 0 jitters. It's phenomenal. In fact, I was drinking Dubby for about a month, and then I switched to coffee, and I went to work, and my boss was like, Henry, you are extremely jittery today. What is going on? And I told her that I was like, well, I stopped drinking Dubby, and I had coffee this morning, and I was literally jittery from coffee. I couldn't write on the whiteboard because coffee made me so jittery. It's crazy. You wouldn't think about that, especially when you drink coffee every day like me. Man, coffee is so delicious, especially get some creamer in there, or if you get an iced coffee. Oh my, the coffee from Speedway, the iced coffee from Speedway, I know it's probably horribly unhealthy, but the iced coffee from Speedway is like my favorite thing to indulge in. But anyways, I've ranted enough. It's way past my bedtime. I'm gonna watch a movie. This is episode number 57, titled "The Middle Chamber" of the CubbyWhole podcast, and then the next episode of this playlist will be on episode number 58 of the CubbyWhole podcast. And yeah, gonna keep grinding Fallout 4 for the rest of CubbyWhole. I mean, might as well. I love Boston. Love hanging out. I love taking out these death claws, and it's just a good time. So, anyways, another way to support the channel, you can Cash App Beagle Eye, donate if you want me to read a book, or you want me to donate money. I'll buy a book and do a book review of it. Lots of book reviews coming. Lots of book reviews have already been done. Lots of dubs to be uploaded. So much more content coming. Stay tuned. Stay gold. Beagle Eye Visions is signing off. I'm out of here. I'm so tired I pressed the wrong button. Alright. Boycott GTA 6. GTA 6 is stupid. Don't buy digital media. Digital media is done. Signing off.